My name's Joe, and today I thought I'd tell you about my experience at Kansas City Comic-Con over the past weekend. Kansas City Comic-Con is a newer local convention. I think this is the second or third year for it. It's similar in scale to Planet Comic-Con, and held at the same venue, Bartle Hall in downtown Kansas City. In years past, Kansas City Comic-Con has been held in August. This year they pushed it back a little bit to November 10th, 11th, and 12th. And even though it's getting a little close to Christmas, I'm still glad they pushed it back because it gives you a little bit more buffer between Kansas City Comic-Con and Planet Comic-Con, which is always held in the springtime. So it gives your wallet a little more time to recover. This year I was an exhibitor at Kansas City Comic-Con. I sold prints of some original artwork and my custom action figure flight stands. So today I'm going to show you some of the things that I sold, some of the things that I bought, and some of the things that I got signed this year at the convention. But before that, I took a little bit of footage on the way to my table Sunday morning, so let's take a look at that now. Cheers. So these are some of the action figure flight stands, like the ones I sold at my booth this weekend. My wife suggested I take some action figures to do a demo at the table, but I didn't want them getting lost or stolen or damaged anyway, so instead I made this trifold display with photos of the action figure flight stands in action. I started making these to use for my collection, and I thought they might be something I could sell, so I started making 15 or 20 of these at a time, kind of like an assembly line. With these action figure flight stands, you can elevate the figures in the back of your shelf so you can see them better, and you can use the stands to display your figures as if they are flying, taking off, or hovering above your other characters. These flight stands are made out of wire hangers, and it's basically just gravity holding the figures on the stands. With female figures like the Phoenix, who have long, rigid hair, you can put the top of the flight stand in between the figure's back and their hair. For some figures, you could plug the tip of the flight stand into the diaphragm joint like I did with this Iron Man. You can just stick the tip of the flight stand into a belt or a harness like I've done with Deadpool. And for figures like Superman with plastic capes or plastic jackets and coats, you can place the flight stand between the character's back and their cape. And for figures that don't have long hair, capes, or belts, you can use a clear plastic rubber band to attach them to the flight stand. I dip the tips of these wires in Plastidip, which gives them a non-slip rubber coating that won't scratch or damage your action figures in any way. And every one of these flight stands has a unique diorama base. Most of the stands are weighted to make them more sturdy, and I even put some thin foam pads on the bottom of each stand to protect the shelves on your display case. If you'd like more information about these flight stands down below, there's a link for another video that I made a while back where I go into more detail about how I made them and the materials that I used. After the convention was over, I picked out the flight stands that I'm going to keep for my collection, and the rest of them I'm going to sell on eBay. So keep an eye out for that. I didn't do a lot of shopping at the con this time because I was by myself most of the time, and I didn't want to leave my table unattended and miss out on any potential sales. However, I did pick up these at the Elite Comics booth before the con opened on Saturday. This is the Corgi 1/43rd scale die-cast subway rocket bat vehicle that John Paul Valley used in the Nightfall series, and this is a 1960s era comic-style Batmobile. Out of all the different die-cast bat vehicles I have in my collection, these Corgi Batmobiles are my favorites. I think there are only 2 or 3 from this line that I'm missing now, And if you're interested in these, then stay tuned to this channel because I'm going to try to make a video about my collection of Corgi Batmobiles in the near future. Also, if you are in or around the Kansas City area, or you're planning on visiting, check out the Elite Comics Shop. It's one of the better comic book stores in town. One of my favorite things to do at a convention like this is to meet the comic creators and get my book signed. Jason Aaron was one of my all-time favorite writers, and fortunately he's local, so he's usually at local cons like Planet Comic Con and Kansas City Comic Con. He would probably sign every book that you asked him to, but I don't like to take up too much of his time, so I just pick out a handful of issues that I especially like or that have particularly cool covers. This is an issue of the Mighty Thor that features an appearance by Quentin Quire, who I was first introduced to in Jason Aaron's Wolverine and the X-Men. I was sad to see that series go, and it's great to see one of the standout characters pop up in Thor. Jason Aaron's entire run on the Mighty Thor has been spectacular in my opinion, and I highly recommend it. And I actually bought 2 copies of Thor 700 because I didn't think you'd be able to sign the cover on this lenticular variant, but apparently you can. And just like Wolverine and the X-Men, I'm sad to see Jason Aaron's run on Star Wars coming to an end. These last 3 issues in particular were some of my favorites from the series. One thing I like about Marvel Star Wars books in general is the artwork. One of the things that turned me off of Dark Horse Star Wars comics was the only way you could tell Luke and Han apart, for instance, was the color of their hair. But for the most part, the artists on the Marvel Star Wars books really nail the likenesses on every character. Phil Hester and Andy Parks are also local Kansas City guys, and I've gotten some of these books signed by them in the past. I like in these Green Arrow books, they do little sketches. That's really, really awesome. I love that. They also worked on some Clerks comics back in the day. This is the Irredeemable Ant-Man, written by Robert Kirkman and illustrated by Phil Hester, and he signed it on the inside of the cover right there. Basically, after my wife and I saw the Ant-Man movie in theaters, I decided to check out some Ant-Man comics, and she bought this for me as a gift. This is the Eric O'Grady version of Ant-Man, and this is really unique because the main protagonist is a complete scumbag from start to finish. And I think that for a story like this, if they'd gotten someone else with a more realistic or gritty art style, then it would have made you want to hang yourself or walk out into traffic. This is a very evocative book, and I think Phil Hester's art is perfect for it because it lightens the mood. I got this Afterbirth Batman #1 and the Batman Annual signed by artist David Finch. This annual is the one with the short story about Ace the Bat Hound that won some awards. I took a lot more comic books that were drawn by David Finch to get signed, but all these current DC creators that were at the con this weekend start to charge $5 after the first 2 signatures, and I decided that it wasn't that important to me. Finch isn't one of my favorite illustrators, even though I like him a lot, and he seemed like a really nice guy. And the same thing goes for James Tynion or Tynion. I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce it. I actually dropped all my Bat books from my pull list the last several months because I wasn't really enjoying any of them anymore. The only thing that Tynion wrote that I really enjoyed was this Batman Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles crossover. And I did pay the $5 per signature to get my complete run signed, because these are all also signed by artist Freddie Williams. This is a perfect crossover book in my opinion. The Turtles go up against Killer Croc in the sewer. Raphael has a chip on his shoulder and thinks Batman's just a pampered thrill seeker. So Batman takes him to Crime Alley, tells him about his origin, and gains Raphael's respect. All the rogues get mutated, and by the end of the story, Batman is eating pizza and joking around with the Turtles. It's really, really awesome. This is all really great stuff that I didn't even know I wanted until after I read it. This story is really fun, and the artwork by Freddie Williams II is incredible. I highly recommend this Batman Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles crossover. And even though I don't care for James Tynion's run on Detective Comics, he seemed like a really, really nice guy, and it was a pleasure to meet him. And he said that Freddie Williams II is actually on the 4th issue of a sequel to this crossover book, and I couldn't be more excited about that. Steve Orlando was also at the con this weekend, and I was going to get some Batman Shadow crossover books signed by him, but he wasn't at the booth when these guys were there, and I'm only lukewarm on that Batman Shadow stuff anyway. Steve Orlando's Night of the Monster Men story arc in Detective Comics was one of the final nails in the coffin for me as far as DC Afterbirth goes. That was a really dumb story, and the art was garbage too. I don't want to see Batman fighting giant kaiju, and especially not in Detective Comics. I feel like Detective Comics should be more realistic detective stories. And except for a few miniseries, I've actually stopped reading all the current DC Comics Afterbirth titles. So for me, the star of the show this weekend, as far as comic books go, is this Elseworlds Batman story called I, Joker. Writer/artist Bob Hall has worked for DC and Marvel, but I didn't have any of his comics to have signed. My friend Paul, who came to help me on Saturday, had this I, Joker book and another Elseworlds Batman comic to have Bob Hall sign for him. And while Paul was thumbing through long boxes, he found another copy of I, Joker for me. And this is a really cool story with really cool art. It's kind of a mashup between Batman and movies like The Running Man, Death Race, and Hunger Games. So Bob Hall is a really cool guy, and this is a really great story if you're interested in reading some Elseworlds type Batman stuff. Finally, the only figures I picked up over the weekend were these Articulated Icons figures. Brian, or Robo, from the Whoosh, was actually one table down from me at the con. I've seen a bunch of his videos about Marvel Legends and Star Wars Black Series figures, and I'd seen videos about these Articulated Icons, but I didn't realize that the folks at the Whoosh were the same people behind the Articulated Icons figures. So it was really cool to meet Robo, and I only wish I had a chance to visit with him more. I was really thrilled to be able to work out a trade for these figures. I traded some of my flight stands for these basic red and black ninjas, and I wound up buying this Temple Guardian Samurai figure. Basically, I picked up the ninjas to use as hand ninjas with my Daredevil Marvel Legends figures, and I bought this Temple Guardian figure to customize into a Silver Samurai for my X-Men collection. And as you can see, I've already customized the Silver Samurai figure. In fact, I got right to work on him as soon as I got home from the convention on Sunday. The scale of these Articulated Icons figures is a little bit smaller than Marvel Legends, but I'm not a huge scale Nazi anyway, and I'm a firm believer in mixing different lines together and fudging scale with posing, action figure stands, and forced perspective. These figures are really great quality and come with tons of accessories. I'm planning on doing a more in-depth video about these figures soon, so if you're interested, then keep an eye on my channel for an upcoming Articulated Icons action figure review. Overall, I had a really great time at Kansas City Comic Con this past weekend. I don't know if I'll go as an exhibitor again or not, because I didn't get a chance to walk around and look at stuff as much as I would have liked to have. Comic book conventions are a great place to find deals on comics, trades, and action figures, and I feel like I missed out a little because I had the table and I wanted to be there for potential customers. I really would have liked to have gotten Burt Ward's autograph in particular to go with my Adam West autograph. Another important aspect of comic book conventions in general is the cosplayers. Now, I've always said that people who cosplay should get into cons for free since they are such a big part of the attraction. Of course, then you'd have people who just slap on a shitty plastic Halloween mask to get in for free. So I don't know how you'd work that out exactly, but you know what I mean. Before I leave you, here are some photos I took of all the cosplayers I saw over the weekend, along with some of my artwork, and a few other photos of my custom action figure flight stands. So until next time, I'll talk to you later. Take care. Bye.